And just a reminder for anybody that doesn't know, usually in about 24 hours after the class, I post the audio to the website. So you're able to go back and listen to those, re-listen to them, or if you miss a class, you're able to listen. And it looks like people are accessing that, so that's great. But we can begin with our what we call our purification, which is a way of setting our intention for the evening. It's helpful. So we'll start with this bell. But here's a little gatha that I wrote. If you don't know what a gatha is that's a Sanskrit word, but it means kind of a statement with intention. So it's not unlike a prayer, but it's not directed to a deity, so it's not really a prayer, but it's kind of a statement of intention, something that you would like to embody. And so here's one just for purification. It may sound familiar because it has some of the familiar elements that we usually use. But we can just begin by closing our eyes. Sometimes it helps to even take a deep breath or two just to kind of release the tension that you have in the body from all the activities of the day and from getting here on time and finding a place to park and making it in. So you can kind of let go of that tension. And then our gatha is, may all beings be well. May the merit of my practice go to the liberation of all from suffering and its causes. May all beings be happy. May loving kindness pervade the entire world. May it be so. So with that, I'll ring the bell. Let there be peace. Let there be peace. Namaskar, everybody. Welcome. And there is peace. So if you want to take a minute to get into a meditation posture, we'll get ready to start for tonight. So however you'd like to be. And a reminder, there's all sorts of cushions and bolsters and yoga mats and all those kinds of things in the closet. Feel free to use those to get comfortable. So you're just looking for a posture that allows you to be relatively comfortable for a period of time without having to battle a lot of aches and pains in the body or a lot of fatigue. And so for each person, you really have to determine how that's going to be for you. It is helpful to have a degree of symmetry, though, so that both sides of your body are kind of doing the same thing, just so that you don't have all your weight supported on one leg or the other, or kind of all of it on one side of your back or another. If it's balanced, it'll be a little more free from conflict. And then, as I mentioned, feel free to move during the meditation practice. If you feel like, oh, this is hurting, I'm really only able to focus on the pain. I can't focus on the meditation. Well, then, go ahead and move. It's okay. Don't feel like you have to stay still. But having said that, for some of you who are more experienced meditators, it can also be helpful to try to hold still just a little longer as you get further and further into your meditation. Doing that can help you focus your mind, help you train the mind and the body to remain still and to remain calm. So you can imagine that, if you move each time there's even the slightest conflict in the body, then there's going to be a lot of moving going on. But if you kind of try and wait a little longer, then you'll find in many cases that the discomfort goes away and you're able to just stay where you were. So that can be a helpful part of the practice. But again, ultimately you have to go with what is best for you. So if you're ready, I'll ring the bell and we'll begin our meditation. I just invite everybody to start by closing your eyes. if you're comfortable with that. Some people don't feel comfortable with their eyes closed during meditation, and if that's the case, that's fine. But if you're able to close your eyes, that just helps to eliminate visual distractions, things that you'll end up thinking about. And then you can begin to breathe through your nose, again if possible. If your nose is stuffy, breathe through your mouth if you need to, but if you can breathe through your nose, that will be helpful as we move through the practice. So now with that, I will ring the bell, and when it goes silent, I'll begin to guide us through the practice. Follow the sound of the bell as it fades into silence. And then let the silence be an invitation to turn your senses inward. So in doing this, we let go of one of the habits of the mind, which is to be focused on events and sounds and things that are happening around us. It's okay to let those things go and just direct the senses inward. Become aware of the feeling of being present in your own body, being present in the present moment with no expectations, just aware of what it feels like to be here, sitting or laying, just the feeling of being present. And there's not a real strong sense of I in that. There's just a feeling of presence, and there's an expansive awareness at the same time. So this is a very safe and stable and pleasant place to begin your meditation. So having this sense of awareness, this sense of presence established in your body, let's all bring our awareness up to the top part of the head and to the area of the scalp. And for a few moments, just focus your awareness there on the scalp. Focus it on any physical sensations that you notice. So you might just need to hang out there for a few moments. Sometimes in the beginning you don't feel much, but if you remain patient and continue watching, you might notice temperature sensations in the scalp. And sometimes those temperature sensations, it can be a sense of inner warmth or coolness, or a sense of outer warmth or coolness. And sometimes there is a sensation of air movement in the room. There is a fan blowing and the air conditioning is running, so you might detect that very subtle movement of air. And then sometimes there are other subtle sensations on the surface of the skin. And sometimes those are tickles or itches. So really in a very patient yet very attentive way, you're just opening up the awareness to these physical sensations, watching them as they arise and watching them as they pass away. If you discover that there's tension anywhere in the scalp, you can release that. Just letting it go, allowing it to leave the body. We can release all the unnecessary tension from the body and retain only that which is necessary to maintain our posture. So very little, just let it go. And then even after the tension is gone, continue observing still in the scalp. The goal is not simply to release tension, but the goal is just to be present with the experience. Some of that experience is tension, some of that is sensation, some of that is the passing away of sensation. And then from the scalp, we can begin to move our awareness downward into the forehead. And really focus on that. See if you can feel the movement of awareness traveling down from the scalp into the forehead. And then moving out a little further into the temples. Moving down a bit further, passing through the eyebrows and moving into the eyes. And then in the same way as we did before, just open up the awareness to the physical sensations. And these are the sensations of your body as they are in the present moment, in the areas where we're focused. So temperature, air movement, sensations on the surface of the skin. Sometimes there is a noticing of tension, which can then be greeted with a complete release. Just an unconditional letting go of that tension, allowing it to leave the body, even smiling as you let it go, releasing your body from the conflict of tension. And now from the temples, you can begin to guide your awareness downward. See if you can feel it moving downward into your ears. Sometimes you can really feel that movement of awareness and then the change of experience when awareness has moved into a new area. So in the ears, you're noticing sensations and letting tension go. And you can move the awareness forward. Feel it as it moves through the cheekbones and moves through the face. Again, just notice the sensations. Be attentively aware, but not uptight in any way. Just noticing, being curious. From the eyes, feel the awareness drifting down through the nose. Feel it moving through the lips and mouth and chin. Just observing sensation. And there's no sensation that you're supposed to be feeling. It's just whatever's there for you in this moment. Sometimes there are obvious sensations. Sometimes not so obvious, not much happening. Just notice. Let the tension go anywhere you find it. You might notice in the jaws that there's tension. Sometimes the teeth are clenched. There might be tightness in the muscles of the face. Just let that go. Again, smile as you release the tension. This is a movement towards peace and freedom. So it is a very happy, joyful experience. And from the chin, you can guide your awareness downward into the neck. Feel it moving through the throat. Sensations there, and then it moves outward through the sides of the neck. And you feel it moving through the back of the neck. Again, just this awareness. Awareness of sensation. Awareness of tension. The response is to let go. Continue to observe. And moving the awareness downward into the shoulders, letting it spread out through the shoulders, observing the sensations. And if you're laying down or leaning against the chair, you might notice the sensation of contact between your shoulders and the surface that you're leaning on. Sometimes there's a sensation of the touch of your clothing on your skin, along with the other frequent sensations of temperature and air movement. If there's tension in the shoulders, if you find that they're shrugged, just let that go. We start to develop a new positive habit energy, which is to respond to tension with release. It's a compassionate release. It's not a pushing it out or a disliking and pushing away. It's just a release, freedom, pleasant feeling, release. And then from the shoulders, let the awareness flow down into the upper arms. And we'll start to name some of these parts of the body, and as I do, you can just repeat the process of moving awareness there and observing sensation, guiding the tension out of the body with smiles and compassion, moving through the biceps, and rotating inward to the inside part of the arm from top to bottom, moving to the tricep, the back part of the arm, and then to the outside surface of the upper arm. This movement of awareness has a real stabilizing effect. You might feel peacefulness, sometimes joyfulness, sometimes well-being. Feel as the awareness flows downward through the elbow joint. Feel it moving down into the forearms now and moving down toward the wrists. Pleasant flow of awareness, illuminating the sensations of the body. So in this practice, there's nothing that's imagined, nothing that's made up. It's just the real experience of the body in this moment, at this time, as it is. From the wrists, let the awareness flow downward into the hands. Feel it passing through the heels of the hands into the palms. You'll notice that there's different sensations in all of these areas. Then on the top surface of the hands and the thumbs and the fingers, let any tension go if there's tightness in the hands. And sometimes we move through and we don't notice tension. It can be helpful to just let it go anyway, as if there were tension noticed. Just let it go anyway and see if it releases you a little more. Flowing down to the tips of the fingers, you can bring your awareness into the fingernails. And just spend a little time there. Just patiently observing, waiting and watching. What are the sensations in the fingernails? And sometimes you will notice this very subtle vibration, a very subtle sensation in the fingernails. Sometimes not, and that's okay. Just whatever you feel. Now from the fingernails, we'll move our awareness, maintain a continuity of awareness. We'll bring it up to the top of the chest. We can spread the awareness across the collarbones, and then observe as it flows downward through the chest. Just feel it passing downward, all the way down to the base of the sternum, And then from there, feel it as it spreads outward through the rib cage. And we're still following that simple process of observing and releasing and then remaining present, staying with the observation. Sometimes as we move through the body and we look at the different sensations, there is a part of the mind that wants to name them and sometimes judge them as good or bad or desirable or undesirable. You can just let go of that tendency of the mind and instead just have the raw experience. Just the pure experience without the thought. And notice how that takes on a slightly different tone in your awareness. No judgment, just being present. Now you can bring the awareness to your underarms. We'll start to guide it down through the sides of the body, all the way down to the waist. Observing and letting go. Bringing the awareness forward into the belly now. See if you can observe the feeling of rising and falling in the belly as you breathe. Or you may notice the feeling of expansion and contraction in the belly with the breath. You may notice the clothing making contact with the skin of your belly and the movement of the breath. And if there's any tension in the belly, let that go. Just let the belly be free. Let it hang out with no restrictions. And then from here, we'll make another move. We'll move around to the top of the back. Starting right at the base of the neck, moving the awareness downward, down through the upper third of the back, passing through the shoulder blades. Observing the sensations, letting go of the tension. Sometimes we'll come upon places in the body where we say, well, here I experience an unpleasant sensation and I have difficulty being objective about it because it's unpleasant. Or I have difficulty letting go of tension because I'm bracing myself against the discomfort or the pain. But here's where we have an opportunity to use our quality of expansive awareness. And just to become aware that we can allow as much space as is necessary for all of these sensations to be just as they are, without needing to react to them in any way. You can just let them be. They are part of the experience of the body in this moment. We can allow them to be as they are without pushing against them or rejecting them. This doesn't mean you're pretending to like them. It just means you're allowing space for the reality of the present moment to unfold as it is. And as soon as you push against that, there's a little bit of stress. There's a little bit of dis-ease. So practice with that, just allowing what is to be. And we can move the awareness down through the middle third of the back. And you can repeat that process of expansive awareness and allowing, not resisting if you feel discomfort in this part of your back. And you can move the awareness down to the lower part of the back. Repeat the process, just observing the sensations without getting involved in judgment and evaluation, and just letting go, allowing what is to be, and just letting go. And then let that awareness flow downward from the lower back. Feel it as it moves downward toward your sit bones. You feel it move through the sit bones. Feel it moving through the hips. Feel it moving through the pelvis. Just aware of the sensation. Letting any tension go. Remaining aware. Peaceful awareness. Moving down into the thighs now. Focusing on the sensations of the thighs. These are large muscle groups in the body, so we can become aware of them in parts, starting with the top surface of the thighs, all the way from the top to the bottom, and then rotating outward the outside surface of the thighs, the sensations and the tension. And then moving to the underside of the thighs. And then finally moving to the inside surface of the thighs. Again, all the way up and down. Observing, letting go. And from here, beginning to allow the awareness to spread downward through the knee joints. Follow it through the knee joints down into the calves. Feel it passing through the shins. Soothing light of awareness. Feel it moving downward through the ankles. Observe as it moves down through the ankles into the feet. And then we begin to observe the different parts of the feet, starting with the heels and the sensations there, and then the soles, balls of the feet. Each of these places reveal different sensations. Tops of the feet, the toes. And then we'll bring the awareness down and focus on the toenails for a few moments. Just bring awareness, open it up. What are the sensations here in the toenails? And sometimes there are very subtle sensations, indescribable sometimes, and that's fine. We don't need to name them, but there's just a subtle feeling of energy or pulsation. Just observe, let the tension go in the toes. And then from here we'll move the awareness back to the top of the head and back to the scalp. One more time, just focus your awareness there. Focus on sensation. Notice tension and let it go. And then you can begin to move your awareness back down through the body at your own pace. But try to move through each part of the body following the same path that we follow together. Just so no part is left out. Every part deserves the attention. As you move through the body, you'll notice the sensations in each part. You may notice that tension has come back in some areas where you let it go a few minutes ago. Some of the common places for this are in the jaws, in the shoulders. They might shrug again. In the belly or in the back. If you notice tension is returned, simply release it. Allow it to leave the body. You just kind of give it safe passage out. You don't have to push it. You just invite it to leave. Wish it well. Smile. Let go of tension. Knowing that tension harbors along with it, more than muscle tension, it harbors a habit energy of the mind, which is to be afflicted by the same difficult emotions that cause the tension in the first place. You might have a disagreement with someone or an argument and tense up as a result because of this unpleasant sensation. You might have some stress in your life due to one cause or another, and this causes you to tense up. And noticing these places, release the tension again and again. There's no limit to how many times you can do this. And in fact, this is an important part of the practice, just doing it over and over. You start to clear out these blockages and these places where the habit energy appears again and again. So this is a movement towards freedom, toward release. And once you've had a chance to move your awareness through the body, you can bring your awareness up to the base of the nose. We'll begin to practice a little bit of anapanasati, or breathing meditation, together. You can start by focusing on the little patch of skin beneath your nostrils and above your upper lip. Focus on that spot. And you can expand that awareness a bit further to include the rings of the nostrils. And then you can expand the awareness a bit further to include the nasal passages. So now you've got this triangular area of the nose kind of mapped out here. And within the triangular area of the nose, be aware of the movement of the breath. So as you're breathing in, be aware that you're breathing in. And as you're breathing out, be aware that you're breathing out. It doesn't require words or internal dialogue. It's just an awareness. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. And as you observe the movement of the breath, try to stay with it for the full duration of each in-breath. Touch it in the very beginning and just stay gently with it. As it goes in, it gets to a point where it begins to slow down, and then it pauses for a moment. And then it reverses direction and it becomes the out-breath. And just stay with that. Gently touch the out-breath and remain with it as it flows out. As it slows and pauses, it reverses direction and becomes the in-breath. So there is this endless cycle of in-breath and out-breath. Just be present with each in-breath, present with each out-breath. And this is a present moment experience. You can only be with the breath that is happening in this moment. All the other breaths are in the past or have not yet happened. Just be with the present moment breath, moving in, moving out. As you do this, become aware of the touch of the breath anywhere in this triangular area of the nose. So as the breath moves in and out, there's an awareness of the movement, but now there's also an awareness of the touch. You feel the touch as a sensation. And if you investigate that further, you may discover that when you breathe in, that the air feels a little bit cooler than it does when you breathe out. And when you breathe out, the air feels a little bit warmer than when you breathe in. And sometimes you'll discover that the in-breath has a quality of dryness when compared to the out-breath, which has a quality of moisture or humidity. So these are all aspects of the breath in the present moment as they occur, and you can only watch what is actually true in this moment. So remain focused with all of your awareness on the triangular area of the nose, the movement of the breath, the touch, and the sensations of the breath. That's your only task. Just stay there. Stay with the breath. Sometimes you'll discover that you're distracted, and so awareness moves temporarily away from the breath. And if that happens, all you need to do is gently guide the awareness back to the breath. It doesn't matter what caused the distraction. There's just a moment of awareness that distraction has moved the awareness away, and so you guide it back. And focus again on the breath. You might stay with it for a few moments, and a sound might pull the awareness away. This is an opportunity to return to the breath. So rather than following the sound, we move back to the breath and just reestablish awareness. Sometimes that happens with physical sensations in the body distracting you. And you'll notice that. And the response is to guide the awareness gently back to the breath. And sometimes you'll notice distractions coming as thoughts in the mind, just imagining things or remembering or planning. And treat them in the exact same way if you notice. Why, this is a moment, a wonderful moment, to guide the awareness back to the breath. Training the mind to stay focused on one object and to let go very easily of all other objects. So let's practice this way together for just a few minutes in silence, focused on the breath, the movement and touch and sensations, and noticing each time there is a distraction and simply bringing the awareness back with a gentleness and with a joyfulness of awakening into the present moment. Let's share a few moments together, a few minutes together in silence, and then I'll ring the bell to end the meditation. So take your time coming out of that. Move around a little bit if you want. It's okay to stand up and stretch or walk back and forth a little bit. Whatever you need to do to kind of return to being comfortable in your body.
The restroom is up right.
Yeah. It's right there. Yeah.
On the road sometimes. This last trip we went to, we got it very hard.
I started the teapot in there,
Light gray out.
or the water pot, so if anybody wants a cup of tea, feel free, help yourself.
Yeah, I had tea last time.
It'll probably be boiling within a minute. It's amazing how fast that thing is.
Should I wait? Or is it, okay,
You probably go in there and probably bubbling already.
okay.
It's incredibly fast. Kind of amazing. It's been nice to have like kind of this full range of space around me for papers and notes, and kind of having it set up the same way each week has it's been nice. Very nice. Well, tonight when we start, I have a new study guide. And I've got a few left over from last week. Although the one last week, I think we've been working on it for a couple of weeks. So I have the 10 Perfections Part 3, and I have the 10 Perfections Part 4. So, yeah, thanks.
When was something was it at the end last week? Oh, that was it, right?
Yep. Yeah, and so actually, yeah,
You
that'll be
here?
the focus of tonight.
Were you here last week?
No, I wasn't.
Yes, last week.
Thank you.
Were you here last week? Oh. Well, then that's part three. You have part three?
Yeah, I got last one.
I think this one.
Thanks.
This is one more.
Thanks, sure.
You missed one.
Was he here last week?
No, she wasn't here last week, so I guess I do need that other one. Unless they already got those.
Yeah, it's possible they haven't, but it doesn't hurt to give them another.
Okay. Well, I gave it to those guys. We'll try again. Yeah.
The extras are fine. Thank you. we may have lost them in there.
Piece of teeth. You can ring a bell.
I have a couple of sticks that they use in Zen. In a lot of the Zen practices, they don't speak. And so they have sticks and they'll bang them together, and that's kind of the indication that, okay, the next phase is starting. So it's a way of maintaining noble silence, but still signaling people. It's kind of a cool thing. You'll hear that if you watch real, often Japanese Zen videos of their practice at their temples. One of the things that they do, which is kind of a neat tradition, is the gasho, which is to put your hands together kind of in the prayer position, or it's also called the namaskara mudra, namaskar that we do together. But one of the traditions is whenever they enter the meditation hall, they'll pause for a moment, look toward the Buddha statue, and then just give a bow. And so what it is, it's sort of it's a recognition of this is the time for mindfulness in the present moment. And that the sitting posture of the Buddha is a reminder to be mindful and to practice. So that's kind of a neat little tradition. I do that during the day when I come in here. And I come in here a lot. So it's kind of a fun little thing. Just stop, do my gasho. But it's kind of neat. All that stuff makes a difference. All of it really does.
Been up to the Japanese garden yet at the?
Not yet. Not yet.
It's been pretty cool.
I may do some of that next week. Yeah. Things are starting to loosen up here a little bit, which is helpful. Okay. So we're going to begin tonight on, we have a new handout. It's the 10 Perfections Study Guide number 4. And so what it is, we're not actually going to be looking at a new perfection tonight. We're just going to do a little bit of a zeroing in on the end part of last week's talk. So last week we left off on page 4, and what we had left to talk about was the 3 characteristics of phenomena, which are anicca, anatta, and dukkha. And so I wanted to spend a little more time focusing on those tonight, just kind of make the whole teaching about those and kind of have a little fun working with them, so that people kind of really get an understanding of what sometimes it seems like really sort of a stuffy or heady type of teaching that's really hard to grasp, and it's like don't really understand what the purpose of that is. But I think we can work with it in a way that we get a real solid understanding of it and get a feel for what this is and how it's helpful. So we'll start off with just a definition of a term, which is a conditioned thing. In the suttas, there's a lot of mention of conditioned things. And so to define that, before we get into this, a conditioned thing is something that depends on something else for its existence. So, in other words, when certain causes come together, the result is the arising of a conditioned thing. Okay? So, when those causes no longer exist, or no longer or are no longer combined in the same way, the conditioned thing passes away. So a real good simple example would be the bell. If I strike the bell there is this conditioned thing, which is the sound of the bell. It happened as a result of me striking it. Now there's the sound of the bell. And if I no longer strike the bell, eventually it just stops reverberating and vibrating, goes into silence, and so that conditioned thing is over. So it's kind of simple. Conditioned thing, other things coming together to make something else. You could take it into inanimate objects, and you could also use this bell, and you could say, well, at one point in time this was different metals, and they were joined together to make an alloy, this bell metal bronze, and then that was pounded and shaped and worked by someone until it took on this form of being a bowl. And so now this is a conditioned thing. It's made of metal, it's made of space, it has a shape, it has a visual quality to it of sort of a goldish bronze color. If you strike it, it emits sounds. So this is a conditioned thing. And so really everything you see around you, everything you experience is a conditioned thing. Why does this matter? How does knowing what a conditioned thing, how does that matter? How does that help you in any way to feel better in your life or to make progress in your meditation practice? Well, here's why. According to the suttas, the meditation teachings, all conditioned things are subject to the three characteristics, which is the topic for tonight. And again, the three characteristics are anicca. These are Pali words. Anicca means impermanence, generally. Second one is anatta. That means non-self. And the third one is dukkha, which we could translate tonight as unsatisfactoriness. I play with this word a lot because we often translate it as suffering. And while that's a perfectly fine definition, it also has many more subtle meanings, so unsatisfactoriness might be a good one. So what do we mean by unsatisfactoriness? Do we mean that just everything we experience is unsatisfactory and it ends up being a problem, or it makes us mad? And it's not that kind of unsatisfactoriness, but what it's saying is that whatever this thing is, it's not going to be ultimately satisfying to you in any sort of a permanent way. That because this is a conditioned thing, it does not have an inherent property of satisfying. It's not going to make you happy forever. So it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. You get a birthday cake, it doesn't make you happy forever, but it sure makes you happy when you're eating a few pieces of birthday cake. So we'll get back into that a little bit. So anicca, anatta, and dukkha, these three characteristics of phenomenon, they're easier to understand when we look at them together and how they sort of relate to each other. They kind of bounce off of each other in our daily experience. And so this is where we can get some real benefit from this. And just a reminder, feel free to turn on the lights if you want to, if you're having trouble seeing, or if you want the lights on. And there are three-way lights, so you can make them brighter if you want to. Let's talk about anicca. Anicca means that all conditioned things, which we talked about the definition, all conditioned things, so we could just say all things. All things are impermanent. They're changing. They're in a constant state of flux. Things are arising and passing. So if you look at consciousness, for example, how do you define consciousness? Now in like Psych 101 in college, there's different definitions of what consciousness is. In Buddhism, or in the meditation teachings, the suttas, consciousness is defined as knowing an object at the six sense doors. So we have six senses. We have five conventional senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. We all have those. It is possible that at some point in time, one of those sense faculties stops working entirely or stops working as well as it once did. But we all have these 6 sense doors. And there is no other way that you can have an experience than through one of these 6 sense doors. The 6th sense is thought. It's the mind. So it's not like a ESP 6th sense that we're talking about. It's just there's the 5 conventional physical senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. And then you can add to that your mind. Because if you were to start to picture something, and a lot of times I'll use the example of an orange because we do orange meditation. If you really focus your mind on thoughts of an orange, you can really picture the way an orange looks, right? So it's almost like you're seeing it. It's not really seeing it, but it's almost like that. So there's that visual aspect to the thought about an object, an orange. You can imagine what it smells like. You could imagine what it tastes like. You could even imagine sort of putting a tart and sweet piece of orange into your mouth and chewing on it. And if you imagine that, you might even feel sort of that tanginess in your tongue. There's sort of that reaction to it. And so a lot of the things that we experience as part of consciousness are just coming from the mind. You know, driving along in the car, we think of something, our experience, our consciousness is of that. So again, the definition of consciousness is knowing an object at the 6 sense doors. And so the question, I wrote it in there, and it's helpful to actually ask yourself the question, because it leads to bhavana-maya-panya, leads to chinta-maya-panya when you think about it. But the question is there any other way that you can experience something? And I guess I'd suggest that there isn't. There is nothing that I've read in the suttas or in any conventional type of Western psychology teachings that suggests that there's any other way to experience something other than through the 5 physical senses or through the mind. Okay. So I strike the bell. There's sound consciousness. You are cognizing sound at the sense door of the ears, the sense faculty ears, hearing sound. It's making contact with sound waves, and you have sound consciousness. If I ask you to look at the bell, now the shape of the bell, the image of the bell is making contact with your eyes. There's sight consciousness. So this is consciousness, just very simple. And so, of course, these things are coming and going all the time. As you look around the room, you're seeing different things. Most of them you kind of ignore because they're sort of part of the ambient background of what's going on here, and they're not remarkable in any way. So, a lot of the stuff you just sort of, you notice it. There's eye consciousness or ear consciousness, but it's just kind of passing through. It's arising and passing, arising and passing. So if your ears, let's say that your ears no longer function. If a person was deaf or always had been deaf, no sound consciousness. Just can't happen. Or if you were a mile away from this place and I rang the bell, there's no sound consciousness of this bell for that reason. So if you look at consciousness through this schema, that consciousness is knowing objects as they make contact with the 6 sense doors, you clearly see that all consciousness is arising and passing away with its objects, right? Does that all kind of make some degree of sense right now? So all consciousness is arising and passing away with its objects. Seeing and hearing and touching and feeling and thinking. And so mind objects, thought objects, they arise and pass away in the same way. You know, if you were picturing the orange a minute ago, well then you kind of let go of that, and we talked about some other stuff, and so, you know, so there was the arising and the passing. Or you might think of something, need to remember to call so-and-so, and that's there for a minute, and then that fades away and gives way to something else. So consciousness is just arising and passing. The sound of the bell is arising and passing, and there's consciousness of it arising and passing. So now here we get into kind of an interesting part. So the Buddha asked the question, where are you in all of that? So normally we take ourselves as human beings to be this relatively permanent, if not ultimately permanent being. You know, depending on our beliefs, some of us might believe in like an eternal soul that goes on after the death of the physical body, or maybe not, but at any rate, regardless of what your beliefs are, you know, for what happens after the passing of the physical body, there's still this question of our experience of us in the present moment, this feeling of me, this feeling of I. And so he asks the questions, where are you in all of these arisings and passings? Can you find yourself in any of that? So for example, are you sound consciousness? Is that who you are? You know, are you sound consciousness? And I guess if you ask that question, the answer is probably no. I mean, you might think of it and say, well, I hear the sound, I experience sound consciousness, but I'm not, you know, I'm not sound consciousness. I seem to be something different, something, you know, maybe more than sound consciousness. Well, are you the sounds? You know, no, I might make the sounds, I might make the sound of the bell, but again, you know, that's not who I am, that's not me. So how about the physical body? Are you the physical body with its sense faculties? So is there sort of a permanent state of existence in this physical body that's unchanging, that seems to be you? And of course the answer to that is no. You know, at one time you were a baby, an infant, and you were an adolescent, you were a teenager, young adult. You know, none of us look like we did 10 years ago. We certainly don't look anything close to what we looked like the day we were born. And yet, we are still here, right? So it's kind of asking these questions, where is us? You know, where's the permanent us in any of this? Is there a permanent us? Or what part of this do we look at and take to be the permanent us? As human beings, we're inclined to take on these various causes and conditions as our identity. So there appears to be a knower in all of this. There's cognition or consciousness of these different phenomena arising and falling, and they're all caused by different things coming together, right? We agree on that. And as we try and look for ourselves and who we really are within this, we know it doesn't seem like we're really just the bare consciousness. You know, maybe there are some more rudimentary types of consciousness in sentient beings that is limited just to, you know, bare consciousness. But there seems to be something else with us, at least with humans. There appears to be a knower that somehow lies beyond this. And so the question, and this can become a very quick practice, is can you find the knower? So what happens when you look for it? I mean, if you just practice this for just 5 seconds with me, if you just kind of close your eyes and think about it, look for the knower. in me there's this thing that's the knower. If it lies beyond the consciousness and beyond the conditions arising and falling, and it lies beyond the body, there's this knowing faculty. Where is it? Can you find it if you look for it? Do you seem to be able to find the source of the knower? And it's kind of an interesting thing to do that. It gets very quiet very fast when you look for it, because suddenly you're focusing all your awareness on this sort of open-ended question. Is there a knower in there, and where is it? Where is the knower? And sometimes conventionally we'll get into a little bit of stuff where we say, well, the knower is it's an aspect of my mind, it's a part of my consciousness, and okay, but can you get a hold of it? Is there a way of sort of grasping it in your mind? Can you get a hold of that knower? And then what happens when you open up and expand the knowing that you experience to all sound as far out as possible? So you can do that. At first there was kind of this looking for the knower sort of inwardly, and now open up awareness and expand it as far as it'll go. Open up to awareness of all sound. And suddenly there's this great expansiveness of awareness. So we may not have been able to nail it down, but we're sort of experiencing these different qualities of awareness. So what this is coming back to is that when there's an expansive sense of awareness, or when there's this genuine inquiry where we're looking for the knower, or we're expanding outward and just being the knower as far as the knower can go, that there is this temporary subsiding of the sense of I. And normally we have that pretty strong ego connection with I, me, mine. But when we do those little thought experiments, it changes. In Pali, this propensity for I-making and then mind-making is called ahankara and mamankara. It's a specifically discussed process. When we create an I, we start to become very attached to it. We want to defend and protect it. And this is kind of beyond the physical body. We all have a survival instinct and survival mechanism, I mean, if we're hungry, we're going to eat, and if it's hailing outside, we're going to seek shelter so we don't get hurt, and we're going to defend ourselves and things like that on a physical level. But we also create these ideas of I, and those are a lot of times around our psychology structure. It's around our ideas about what our personality is. Well, I'm a man because I'm this gender, and I'm white, and I'm in this age group, I'm in my 50s, and I'm an American, and I'm, and so you start to kind of name off these things that you use as ways of identifying yourself, right? And so when there's an I, we start to become very attached to it. The interesting thing is those I attributes are they're concepts. Most of that stuff isn't really like real or graspable or actionable, but a lot of people get really focused on it, really attached to it, and really carried away by it. And of course that can cause some problems. We see that. And then once there's an I and we want to defend and protect that, then we start to say things belong to this I. This is mine. This is mine. This is not yours. That's yours, it's not mine. Again, there's practical reasons for that. There's a conventional reality to all that, but a lot of that, again, is just, these are ideas that we bring to it. And the inevitable result of that is this thing we call dukkha. That's stress, or agitation, or dis-ease, or unsatisfactoriness, or suffering. And you can feel that a little bit. It's like when you turn inward for a moment and look for the knower, there's this very genuine, very attentive inquiry taking place. You're looking for the knower that's behind the consciousness. And you're not really landing on anything. And then you expand the knowing awareness outward to wrap itself around all sounds. And so you hear the fountain, and you hear the vents blowing, and sometimes you'll kind of hear a car or a vehicle outside. And so in this expansive awareness, again, it's an opening. There's not a real strong I in that. So there's a different feeling. It's like one versus the other. The open, expansive awareness, the earnest, honest looking for the knower. There's not a strong sense of I. And so there's really kind of a feeling of very quiet calm to all that. So you might be able to feel that. Anatta means not self. It doesn't mean you don't exist, because you do, but it means that there's no permanent, unchanging self. So we spend an awful lot of time trying to kind of make up our identity, define its attributes, what it is, what it isn't, what it believes in, what it doesn't believe in, what it likes, what it doesn't, and then we start to defend all that, and then we start to kind of work on setting up the things that belong to the I. And in a lot of that is where our stress and our agitation, our worry and our fear comes up. And so you got to ask the question, well, how much of that is really who I am? And so the teaching says, none of that is who you really are. That you're something that lies, you transcend that. The real you is something stronger, more, it's peaceful, it lies beyond these comings and goings. So anatta means that you are not these temporary, discrete moments of cognizing. There's no permanent thing you can point to and say, this is who I am. You can point to your body and say, this is who I am. It's not permanent. It's changing. Despite all this, all of us tend to take on our past experiences and memories and thoughts to be ourselves. But there's nothing substantial there that you can get a hold of, because it's all anicca. It's all impermanent. It's all conditioned, arising and passing away. But because we don't realize this, it leads to the dukkha, which is the stress, the unsatisfactoriness. And when we attach to the ideas about who we are and our identities and what belongs to us, we feel this stress. We feel the dis-ease, the dukkha. When we let go of these very limited ideas, constrictive and restrictive ideas about who we are and what belongs to us, we get a real experience of freedom. A real experience of freedom. Attaching, clinging, causes dukkha. Letting go leads to freedom. And the ultimate freedom is nibbana, which is the unconditioned. Nibbana essentially means the unconditioned. Nibbana is the Pali word, and nirvana is the Sanskrit word. And in Zen teachings, nibbana is often called emptiness. Emptiness. Does anybody here know what a Gedanken experiment is? Anybody? No? It is from my notes earlier today, I wrote this down. Gedanken experiment is a thought experiment using conceptual experimentation as popularized by Albert Einstein. Einstein wrote about his theory of general relativity, and he said it was the result of a Gedanken experiment. I take it that the word Gedanken is probably German.
Yiddish, maybe?
Yeah, possible. Interestingly, this is how he came upon the theory of general relativity. So it was a thought experiment. And I think it's interesting because in the previous handout, we talked about the different kinds of wisdom. And Panya, specifically Chintamaya Panya, the second type of wisdom, that's what a Gedanken experiment is. It is the working through of those concepts in the mind until you come to a really firm place of understanding, of wisdom, of Panya. And I thought it was interesting because this was detailed by the Buddha 2,500 years ago. And Albert Einstein used the same theory and practice to come up with the theory of relativity. And interestingly, I read a quote by the Dalai Lama that he said, if science proves that any part of Buddhism is wrong, then Buddhism will have to change. And I thought, wow, that's kind of a refreshing statement from someone who's kind of in a leadership role of a world religion. But anyway, a Gedanken experiment, we can do it together. This is one that was described by, he's a great teacher at IMS, Insight Meditation Center. His name is Guy Armstrong. Really one of my favorite teachers. And he uses a Gedanken experiment in one of his teachings, in which he uses the contemplation of outer space. And the goal of the Gedanken experiment is to try and get an idea of what the real you is, behind kind of the comings and goings, to sort of give you a feel for what that might be, just a flavor of it. So we'll do this together. So again, we're going to use a contemplation of outer space. So I'll guide you through this one and just invite you to close your eyes. So imagine that you are at the edge of our solar system. So you're out in space at the edge of our solar system, and you're just beyond the sun. The sun is at your back. Okay? And somehow you're perfectly safe out there. You're breathing and you're safe and protected, but you're standing at the edge of the solar system with the sun at your back, and you're looking into an area of space in which there are no stars. Okay, so just deep empty space, there are no stars. So if you're looking into this area of no stars, what do you see? What do you see? Probably nothing, right? Just black. It's just black. There's nothing there. So continue to look in the same direction. It's black because nothing is there. And more specifically, there's nothing there to reflect the light of the sun. But is there light present? That's the next question. You can't see anything. It's black, completely black. Is there light present? And the answer is yes. That light completely pervades all of this black, empty space. The light waves are there or the light particles are there, depending on which end of physics you look at. But this black empty space is completely pervaded by light. But because there is nothing to reflect it, there is no visible light. But the light is there. And so you can imagine that. You can kind of do this, you're still picturing this, and you can say, well, all right, so what would happen if a comet traveled across the space of sky that you were looking at? And it just passed through, and it took 30 seconds to pass through. Would you see it? And the answer is yes, you would see it, because there is an object moving through the emptiness, and it is illuminated now by the light of the sun, which pervades the empty darkness. And so you get a sense of how this is true and how this is happening. And in this Gedanken experiment, you really conceptually, you see, yeah, this is true. I believe these all to be factual statements. Now, your own awareness, let's just kind of tie it back, come back to that. Your own awareness, consciousness, is consciousness of anything that makes contact with one of the 6 sense doors that results in cognition, but somehow beyond the cognizing part of the mind, there is an awareness that seems to remain. So the emptiness of the open mind in expansive awareness is like the black space. The knower, the awareness part of you, is like the light from the sun. And so your experiences become whatever moves through this vast, empty spaciousness of mind and is illuminated by the light of awareness. And so things are passing through. But as it happens, just like if it's illuminated by the sun isn't saying, I'm going to let you through and you can't go, and you're a good object to move through and you're a bad object. And the sun, its job is simply to illuminate. And awareness is simply there to illuminate. And the mind is the vast, empty, open, deep space. Dark and empty in a very positive way, and that is just wide open. And there is this experience of awareness illuminating it all. So the Buddha talks about something within us that is unconditioned, that is not subject to arising and passing away, that there is something that is not subject to anicca, anatta, and dukkha, and it is that capacity for perfect, pure awareness that we have. So, just maybe in this little Gedanken experiment, and then in some of the other stuff, looking for the knower, you start to get a taste of, there's this incredibly peaceful, stable part of us that's just there. And we sort of overlay all of these ideas on top of it. And then we identify with all the ideas. But they're just like the comets moving through. And what we really are is that illumination from the sun, that's the awareness, and the mind is just the vast, empty, open space. And so we can start to see our thoughts as they come up, particularly the difficult ones, the unpleasant ones, the scary ones. We can start to see those, and rather than say, yep, that's me, I'm the person who has all these issues or hang-ups, or I'm the person that's always scared, or I'm the person that has PTSD, and I'm not trying to minimize any of these things, but so many of us who have dealt with anxiety and depression and PTSD and all of these other things that are really challenging, we identify with those things. We take them on as a part of who we are. And what this practice is saying is that you are something far more vast, far more stable, just beyond, in the same way that the edge of our solar system is just about beyond, imagination. So your capacity to see things moving through awareness and not needing to attach to them and take them on as a part of who you are is incredibly liberating. So it comes up, and so often it's just the stuff we beat ourselves up with, right? It's just, oh, there I go again, I can never do anything right, or I don't deserve to be loved, there I go again with this or that. It's the stuff we beat ourselves up with, and we identify with it. We say, that's who I am. We don't say it out loud, but that's what we think, that's what we feel. So this is asking us, with these three characteristics, to kind of use this as a way of changing our relationship with our ideas of who we are. And it's something different. And that it's something very wonderful, very powerful, very mysterious, very transcendent, but is also a source of great joy and liberation, because you get a taste of it and you sense that there is freedom there. There is freedom there. Hopefully you felt that a little bit, as we look. We're out of time. I would love to talk about this for another couple of hours, but we're out of time. I would love to come back next week and talk about this after you've had a chance to do your own Gedanken experiments with some of this stuff. See if anybody has anything that they want to share in terms of thinking about this. I think that's part of what's neat about this practice too, is that there's always sort of this challenge to sit with it and run it through the test, your own Gedanken test. See if you can poke holes in it. See what you find. And so I'd love to talk about that next week. And so if anybody has anything to share, we can do that. And we'll finish up the last 2 pages of this. I think that's where we left off. Yeah, pretty much the bottom of page 2. So we'll finish up page 3 and 4, and there's some other cool things, some teachings by Ajahn Chah that are in here as well. And then I want to do a little additional meditation with you next week that'll hopefully give you access to this same experience in a more practical, sort of earthly way. So we'll do that. So I hope you found this interesting.
Confusing.
Confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can see how you might come to that conclusion. Well, we'll work with it a little bit. come up with some very simple ways of just sort of making this just kind of unfold so you see it. But it's really wonderful. Really wonderful. So let's take a minute before we go. And this is helpful too. So we just talked about a bunch of stuff, very interesting. Everyone's running a Gedanken experiment in their head right now. I would say right now, let go of that. And just let go of the teaching and the words for a minute. And instead, focus once again on your feeling of presence in your own body, not in a limited way, but looking inward and really touching the vast emptiness that is your own consciousness, that is your own awareness. So there's a spaciousness to it. And touching that place within you, we will recite the 4 Brahma-viharas, which is, may all beings be free from suffering and its causes. And may all beings be surrounded by love and kindness. And may all beings experience true joy and happiness. And may all beings be equanimous and free and peaceful. And all of you in this room sharing this time with me, may you be truly happy. May you be truly joyful.